All right, let's dive into one of the most intense and dramatic moments in the entire book of Acts. We're talking about the Apostle Paul's final, dangerous journey to Jerusalem. You can find it all in Acts chapter 21, and trust me, it's a powerful story about resolve, destiny, and what it means to follow a call no matter what. So, let me just start with this question, because it really gets to the heart of everything we're about to see. What if you knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that the path you are on would lead straight to suffering, to being captured? Would you keep going? That is the exact spot Paul is in. And his answer? Well, that's what makes this story unforgettable. First things first, we need to understand Paul's journey itself. And the thing you've got to get is that this was not just a simple trip. For Paul, this was a mission. It was an unstoppable push from a power so much bigger than his own desire to, stay safe. And you can feel the momentum right away. After this incredibly emotional goodbye in Miletus, it's just bang, bang, bang. They sail to Kos, then the next day it's Rhodes, then on to Patara, where they immediately find a ship heading right for Phoenicia. They land in Tyre. See what I mean? There's this incredible urgency here, like he's being pulled forward by an invisible string right toward Jerusalem. And here's why he was so driven. It's this idea of a divine compulsion. This whole trip, it wasn't Paul's plan. He'd already said back in Acts 20 that he felt compelled by the Spirit to go. So this isn't just Paul being stubborn. This is radical obedience to a conviction deep inside him that he just can't ignore no matter what it might cost him personally. This is really the engine driving this whole story. But here's where it gets complicated. The moment Paul connects with other believers, this divine mission of his runs headfirst into some really stark prophetic warnings. And this is where the tension just skyrockets. The first big warning hits him in Tyre. He's been with the disciples there for a week, and then they speak to him through the Spirit. And their message? They practically beg him not to go to Jerusalem. Now, just stop and think about that for a second. The very same Spirit that is compelling Paul to go is now telling his friends to warn him away. It's a really fascinating moment. What is going on here? So how do we square that circle? Well, the key is understanding what these prophecies were really for. They weren't a stop sign. They weren't a divine command saying, Paul, turn back. Instead, they were more like a spiritual heads up. They were God's way of confirming that, yes, this path of obedience is going to be incredibly hard. The prophecies were there to prepare Paul for what he was called to endure, not to help him escape it. And the warnings weren't over, not by a long shot. The group travels on to Caesarea, and they're staying with Philip the evangelist. Yes, that Philip. And it's here that we get the most dramatic, most vivid prophecy of the whole story, delivered by a prophet from Judea named Agabus. Now, Agabus doesn't just say some words. He puts on a full-blown performance, kind of like one of the old-school prophets from the Old Testament. He walks up, takes Paul's own belt, and uses it to tie his own hands and feet. Then he gives the message from the Spirit. The man who owns this belt is going to be bound just like this in Jerusalem and handed over. I mean, can you imagine? It wasn't some vague fortune-telling. It was a physical, chilling demonstration of exactly what was coming. Okay, so this brings us right to the emotional core of this entire account. After a prophecy like that, how does everyone react? How does Paul react? This is where we see what he's really made of. And honestly, everyone's reaction is exactly what you'd expect. It's completely human. When they hear this, Paul's friends, his travel buddies, they just lose it. They start weeping, begging him, please, Paul, don't go. Don't walk right into this trap. They love him and they are terrified for him. They just want to protect their friend. But Paul's response, man, it just cuts right through all the tears and the fear. He looks at them and says, why are you doing this? You're breaking my heart. But his resolve is like steel. He tells them he's not just ready to be bound, he's ready to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus. That's it. This is the heart of the matter, a total willingness to sacrifice everything for his mission. So where does that leave everyone? The conflict isn't just resolved by Paul's powerful words. The story actually ends with the community's response, and there are some huge lessons in there for us today.
Seeing that Paul absolutely could not be persuaded, his friends finally stopped pleading. They fell silent. And then they said, the Lord's will be done. That is such a huge shift. They go from actively trying to stop Paul's suffering to completely surrendering to God's bigger plan, as painful as it was. They chose to trust a will that was bigger than their own fears.
And with that, they finally make it to Jerusalem. And right before all the chaos that was prophesied begins, there's this one last beautiful moment of peace. They're welcomed with open arms by the believers there. It's just this short, sweet reminder of the fellowship that kept them going, even when they were standing on the edge of a cliff. So, what can we take away from this incredible story? Well, for one, it teaches us to listen to warnings as preparation, not necessarily as a command to stop. It's a call to find the courage to actually embrace risk for the things we truly believe in. It shows us the incredible power of community prayer, of yielding to God's will, and of simply being there for others who are walking their own difficult paths. And that brings it all the way back around to you. See, Paul's story isn't just some ancient history lesson. It's a blueprint for what costly obedience looks like. So I'll leave you with this to think about. When has following your own sense of calling required you to walk straight towards something that terrified you? Paul's story really challenges us to ask ourselves what we're truly ready for.